Probably would have just jumped in front of a train. 2 days later, I'm scoring goals for Ipswich at West Ham. I hear this all the time. Why do they need to gamble when they earn so much money? And people don't understand. It's not like, oh, I'll just stop. It's a process. It's an addiction. A drinking drug addiction, you can see it in their face. Whereas gambling, you don't see it. It was always the case, I'll win the next bet, I'll win the next bet. As a young kid, you don't think that in 4 or 5 years' time, it's going to be an addiction. When I was at Newcastle, I owed a bookmaker through the players. It was something like 80 grand. I was only like 19, 20 at the time. I just didn't want the help. I just thought, if I keep gambling, then I can win the money back. So my incentive was, if I play well on the pitch, I'm going to earn more money to bet. My agent, he phoned the club and said, he needs to get help. Somebody needs to do something. So you've got the club thinking that they're doing me a favour by sending me there to help me, when really I'm abusing it by going to the betting shops and that sort of thing. Nobody could help you unless you want to help yourself. My addiction was mainly because I was trying to get the feeling on the pitch, off the pitch as well. I was getting in trouble with gangsters and stuff like that. People turning up at the training ground. I was getting text messages from some people who I got money off to gamble, saying they're going to do this, they're going to do that. And I just thought to myself, I was like, I've got nothing to lose anymore. What's the point in being around, sort of thing. I've hit rock bottom. I was in probably the top 5 scoring charts, and people are thinking, well, he's got no problems. People don't understand what's actually going on in people's lives. It just changed me as a person. Going to India, it made me appreciate what life was all about. It got to a point where whenever I speak to people now, it's like no different to anybody else. I had a talent, that was it. My job was a footballer. Somebody's job could be a car salesman or working in a supermarket. We're all human beings. It's just I had a different talent to somebody else.
It's my belief that too many societal problems persist because we keep relying on the same ways of thinking. Question the Default exists to challenge the norms that shape our society, dismantling the status quo and exploring better alternatives for how we live and manage our health and well-being. Question the Default is for those who are driven to create a better future. If this mission resonates with you, please consider subscribing, liking, or sharing. Every single small action helps us on our mission. Thank you. In this episode, we sit down with Michael Chopra, former Premier League football player. Over the years, I've watched Michael play, travelling up from Cornwall to St James's Park in Newcastle, watching him score goals at St James's Park. What I didn't know was that Michael Chopra was struggling with his gambling during that time. My heart goes out to him, being on TV, people cheering his name, but actually being unable to share that kind of hidden struggle that was connected to his mental health and gambling. He played for many clubs that we know. He was somebody that was chanted about at most games that he would play. Even to this day, he's adored in the likes of Cardiff City. And for me, what really holds true when you listen to Michael share his story today is how prevalent it was within his life. He was there training with kind of superstars like Alan Shearer and Gary Speed even. But always on his mind, as soon as he finished training, he would be there gambling, thinking about gambling, what that next bet is going to be. And you're talking significant stakes. But this is somebody that, growing up in Newcastle, had the world at his feet. He had so much opportunity and, of course, lived his potential. But actually, we question some of that in this episode. What could have been if he wasn't in such a place of difficulty with his gambling? In this episode, we talk about some of the hidden natures of gambling, why it's so prevalent in our society, but most importantly, why not enough action is taking place in our world of politics, in the world of advertising and our marketing of gambling. We need to do more to protect young people. And today's episode is all about that. And I'm very grateful for Michael for all the efforts he made to be on the show today. Thank you. Welcome to the show, Michael.
Thank you.
How are you? Feels a bit surreal having Michael Chopra on the show as a lifelong Newcastle fan. And I was just saying then, I think the last time I saw you, I was getting an autograph. I don't know where the autograph might be, but I remember it was I won a kind of a competition, the Junior Magpie, back when I must have been like 10 or 11.
Yeah, it must have been a long time ago.
I was young.
Yeah, Junior Magpies, yeah.
And I remember everyone queuing up. And my mum and dad actually took me all the way up from Cornwall. So it was a 9-hour journey to meet the team. And I think that's the last time you and I were ever this close.
Wow. That is a long. But look, back then, when I was playing and you were a Junior Magpie, the team was amazing. Some great players on the team: Alan Shearer, Solano, Robert, the late Gary Speed. Yeah, so amazing. You've met some good players through the
Super
Junior
players.
Magpie scheme.
Totally, absolutely loved it. But no, just a huge thank you for being on. Of course, we're going to spend a lot of time, talking about gambling related harm today. So you've been kind of very open about, and massive hats off for how you have done that. I've tried to read and absorb as much as I can, and for me, it was really interesting. I've also been someone that struggled with gambling, kind of looked up to you and the team at that point, but also just hearing how difficult that was for you and your life. So just a massive thank you for being here.
No problem.
So I think it would be amazing if you kind of just take us back, life in Newcastle, a young boy, like family background, like what was life like in Newcastle?
Look, yourself being a Newcastle fan, it's a proper football city. It's a one city, one club. My dad was really keen on football as well. So whenever I think probably the first match I went to was when I was about 6, 7 year old. Obviously in the old First Division back then. And I remember my dad used to take me in the Gallagher, and we used to get there quite early to try and make sure we get a spot. And he would sit me on. Back then, you had like the concrete barriers. There was probably quite a lot of the barriers at the time, and he used to sit me on top of it so I could see. Obviously, it was all standing back then in the Gallagher. And he would just say to me, "Don't move until after the game." He would put me there, and then he would go to the back of the steps, and then that was it. It was me supporting Newcastle United. Obviously, as a kid growing up in the area, everybody was football mad, and then especially when I think it was '93 when they got in the Premier League. Obviously under Keegan, football was brilliant, and that was really the time when I got scouted by Newcastle. I was playing for my local boys club on a Sunday, and one of the coaches, John Carver, who used to be the manager at the football club, he come over and asked my dad if I wanted to come to the School of Excellence, which it was called back then, and that was it really. It was like a dream come true. I'm a 9-year-old kid going to hopefully, but well, back then you don't know, but looking back now, it was on the footsteps of becoming a professional footballer. And look, it was great. Obviously, my dad was Indian, Asian background. My mum was English. My dad used to have his own news agents, so he used to work at 6 o'clock in the morning till 8 o'clock at night. But he would always make sure that I had the best football boots whenever the Adidas Predators came out, the very first ones. I think it was in '94. He would make sure that I had them. Whenever I was playing a game, my boots they'd look brand new. They were sparkling. I think they used to rub the dubbing on them, what you would call it back then, to make them a little bit shiny and the leather soft. And my dad was all behind me, and my mum, whenever there was a match, training, they'd always take me. They'd stand there and watch me, even in the rain, when it was snowing, when it was cold, and that was it really for me to get onto the journey of getting on that pathway to becoming a professional footballer.
Yeah, it's incredible. And how were you able to focus on like education whilst you were kind of 9 years old?
It wasn't really when I was 9 years old. It was the end of the day. I just loved playing football. Yeah. It was more of a case when things started to get serious, when I was probably 13, 14, 15. Obviously, when I was 13, 14, we used to go for England schoolboy trials at Lillyshaw. So every so often I'd go away with probably 100 kids from around the country that they'd had come to watch, and they'd picked out and they wanted to get on the ladder of playing for England as well. So it wasn't until like 14, 15, and then obviously the reputation I had as a kid was really high. The club had huge expectations for me. So I was playing. Sometimes I was going away with the reserves when I was 15 years old. So the club would have to ring the school up and ask the school if I had permission to not go to school on a Friday, because I had to travel with the youth team and play on the Saturday.
Not a bad reason.
But it was it was the kind of experience that I was getting and what I needed back then. And then obviously when I turned 15, 16, I signed a contract with Newcastle that as soon as I finished school, barring if I got an injury, then I had a contract in place to play for Newcastle. So obviously, and there's probably kids listening to it and shouldn't take my advice on this, but when I was sitting my GCSEs and things like that, I would go and turn up for the exam and I'd just write my name on the paper, the test sheet, and just put it to one side and just sit there for 2 hours. And then the people marking my paperwork must have been thinking, well, what's he been doing? It's blank, do you know what I mean? He's just got his name at the top. But that was me. It was just like, I'm going to be a footballer. Everything I do, I'm gonna make it as a footballer. And when I was 15, 16, I lost a lot of friends from school because they would want to go and do their own thing on a Friday night and Saturday night, especially at the age of 15, 16. They'd want to go down the park and do bits and bobs. Whereas me, I was wanting to be in the house, watching football, Friday night football, Monday night football, that sort of thing. So I kind of distanced myself away from friends. Looking back at it now, should I have done that? Probably not. I should have kept them close and they should have been on the journey with me. Do you know what I mean? But sometimes you have to make sacrifices in life, and that was the sacrifice I had to make as a young kid.
And you've been absorbing that in the Gallagher end, so almost feeling it every weekend. Like it's quite hard to escape that. Yeah. I imagine, especially when you had it at your fingertips at that point.
Yeah, it was brilliant. Watching the first team play. Do you know what I mean? And back then, like I always say, football back then was where it should be. There wasn't that much money involved, and whereas nowadays it's more of a business. So it was just exciting football. You didn't have a Guardiola coming into the Premier League and everything's going to go backwards and sideways, and you're going to play tiki-taka and stuff like that. It was you attack, we attack, you attack, we attack, and that's what football should be. Do you know what I mean? And that's what was exciting, and it was exciting for me because I was a striker, and I was growing up watching Andy Cole and Peter Beardsley for Newcastle, and I don't know if you could get two better players to look up to and for scoring goals than Andy Cole at the time before he went to Man United. And then after the games, when I go home, I'd watch Match of the Day and then play for the School of Excellence on a Sunday. That was football for me.
And what was it like breaking into the first team with the manager that you had and the team you had around you?
Yeah, look, it was a dream come true. Do you know what I mean? I'd worked so hard from the age of 9 up until 16, 17, and I was training with the youth team on day-to-day basis. Sometimes I'd get promoted into the reserves if there was a game on the Monday night or the Tuesday night, and then if the first team was short of some players, sometimes I'd go train with the first team as well. And as a 16, 17-year-old, it was like, this is where I want to be. You're getting a little bit of an appetite about mixing in with the first team players, what it's all about. And like I said, I was just so determined that one day that was going to be me. It was going to be me that was sitting next to Alan Shearer, getting changed in the same change room and being on the same pitch as Alan Shearer and that sort of thing, because it got to a point where obviously when Andy Cole left and Peter Beardsley was starting to get a little bit too old and starting to retire, my next hero was Alan Shearer. And when he come to the football club, it was brilliant. He's a Geordie. I went to the same high school as him, and I was then trying to follow his footsteps as well.
That's interesting. So even in the school, I guess everyone was Shearer.
Yeah.
So you really could not escape.
No.
You had no choice. You had to make it a football player. Wow, that is like such a Newcastle football background, isn't it? Childhood that you experienced. Yeah, and what a moment then. So then you're playing for Newcastle. You're in the first team. What was those moments like, trying to kind of keep up kind of appearances with the players that you're in, and you've shared openly around that's where your gambling started. What was life like there?
Well, people have always said to me how it started, and obviously when I went to Sporting Chance as well, they were asking the same questions. But look, card schools were rife back then, even for the national team, and it was just an English thing. You play cards. Everybody plays cards, whether it's in a hotel a day before a game, whether it's traveling to the game. It was that sort of thing, and I wanted to be in with the big boys. Do you know what I mean? I was a 17, 18-year-old kid, and I wanted to be part of the team. Do you know what I mean? I didn't, and no disrespect to some players, but your likes of Andy O'Brien, your Robbie Elliott, your Aaron Hughes, they were different to the other players. The likes of Kieran Dyer, Jermaine Genius, Shea Given, Steve Harper, Woodgate, Titus Bramble, Solano, Shearer, the late Gary Speed. So there was loads of us. Do you know what I mean? And I wanted to be part of that. When the players, I remember one time we took a 5-seat aeroplane from Newcastle to Cheltenham, and I was in there as an 18, 19-year-old. Do you know what I mean? I'm going to Cheltenham with England captain and the Welsh captain and this sort of thing. It was a dream. Do you know what I mean? To be around them guys, and I just thought for me to be with them, then I had to kind of join in and be part of it. They weren't forcing me to do anything. It was off my own back, and that's probably when I started playing cards. Whenever we were doing a pre-season trip in Malaysia, we were on an aeroplane, and obviously Newcastle to Malaysia is quite a long distance flight, and I'm sitting there and I'm looking at all the 50s on the table. It's like, you're talking thousands, do you know what I mean? And all you're doing is playing 3-card brag. Who's got the best 3 cards and who's the biggest bluffer?
Was it just to pass the time more than anything, or was there like
a little bit? Yeah, I think so. And then obviously, like I said to you before, it was the main thing that most clubs were doing is playing cards. I don't think you see it nowadays, card schools and stuff like that. But back then it was rife. It was one of the main things that people would do on a bus journey or on a plane journey.
It's quite interesting because obviously, I feel like a lot of this podcast today is going to be about Newcastle, but they did a behind the scenes not too long. I think it's Jacob Murphy or Alanga, I can't remember who it was, and they were just filming the players, what they were doing on the plane back from South Korea. And everyone was just on their phones.
Yeah.
It's quite interesting.
Well, it's different now, isn't it? Yeah.
You weren't on your phones. In fact, you were technically socialising, but obviously it came with...
But even back then, I don't even think you had... Well, and you didn't have the iPads and that sort of thing. I think we had like portable DVD players and stuff like that, but there's only so much you can watch, do you know what I mean, without having a bit of enjoyment.
And so can you remember that first moment you said, you know what, I'm going to...
Pretty much, yeah.
Do you remember how much you were staking? Did you win?
Well, I was only earning £500 a week at the time. So obviously I was £500 is not going to get you anywhere, do you know what I mean, in a card school with the big boys. But no, like I said before, it was all... The people have always said to me, well, they're forcing you to play and stuff like that, and they would never force me to play, do you know what I mean? In the end, they actually helped me out. And we'll talk about that a little bit later on. But it was a case of me wanting to mix it. But as a young kid, you don't think that in 4 or 5 years' time it's going to be an addiction. Do you know what I mean? It's going to lead on to problems and worse things in your life.
Yeah, totally. I can see that. It was almost part of the environment of professional support at that time versus individual people. And I can definitely relate to that, especially from an alcohol perspective as well. But it's interesting to see that. Why do you think at that stage, the age of life you were at, like, why was it different for you, do you think, than others in that group?
Well, there wasn't many young kids that come through the youth team and played what travelling with the first team at the time. Obviously there was myself, Shola Miobi, obviously Gary Codwell, Stevie Codwell. They were a couple of years ahead. But they had their own company. Do you know what I mean? Whereas I wanted to be with the big dogs, sort of thing.
The plane to Cheltenham.
Well, yeah,
you want to be with that.
It's the excitement. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. It's you're going all these places with professional first team, international first teamers, and I think that's probably why I was different to some of the players that came through but there wasn't that many players that were training with the first team and playing in the first team when I was as well from a young age.
And for you, what did gambling look like? So that, on the planes or on the buses, using card games, did it kind of infiltrate other forms of gambling? Was there any like casino, sports gambling, and how did in those early years?
But it wasn't casinos, wasn't really sports gambling. I don't even think the betting apps were out back then. I remember at one point we had some of the players had a private bookmaker where they would give you a credit and you'd square them up at the end of the month, or if you owed money, you'd pay it at the end of the month. And all that was just like 1248 Southall, horse number 2, £500 win. Take the price, and then you get a text message back saying price, I don't know, 6-4, bets on, and that was it.
No money exchanged.
No money exchanged. That's how easy it was. You get a credit limit, and that's how easy it was to send a text message, because there wasn't a mobile phone app. I don't think back in the early 2000s to do that. If I remember, whenever I was going to put bets on, I'd go straight from training. I'd go to the betting shop. I'd stay in the betting shop for 2-3 hours after training. So that was me betting on the horses. So I'm playing cards with the players, but then outside of that, I'm going into a betting shop and I'm betting on the horses.
In full Newcastle tracksuit, I'm assuming. You were.
Well, no, because we used to go in our normal kit to the training ground.
Right.
We only wore the tracksuits if we were traveling.
Yeah.
But yeah, everyone knew who I was.
You
know
faced,
what I mean? Yeah, because I had high profile as a kid and growing up in Newcastle. Newcastle's small. Everybody knows your business. But yeah, and looking back then, I was thinking, what was I doing? Do you know what I mean? I should have. I had a talent, and I kind of abused my talent. Do you know what I mean? Because my talent was so good to get to the level where I was at without really working hard. Do you know what I mean? I was more focused on going to a betting shop than staying behind in training and that sort of thing. And whenever I talk to people about this, they're like, they don't understand how I could perform at a high level where I was doing with everything that was going on off the pitch.
Yeah, it's quite incredible that you had the career that you had whilst battling such difficulty.
Well, it just goes to show you, if I didn't have a gambling addiction, my career could have been so much better. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because as a kid, I remember I made my debut against Everton, and obviously Rooney had just broke through at the time for Everton, and we played against each other for my debut. I think it was back then. It was called the Worthington Cup.
Okay. Yeah.
So they were billing it Chopra versus Rooney. Do you know what I mean? It was like two young guns going against each other. And obviously Wayne went on to bigger and better things than what I'd done. But at the time, the attention and the pedigree and the profile, what people were making out for me, it was really high. Do you know what I mean? And that sort of thing. It's just I didn't really fulfill the potential.
Yeah, that point really kind of sticks to me in terms of that. After training, you went to the bookmakers. You didn't stick around in the extra hours. Everyone hears about Ronaldo, doesn't he? The extra hours, and just kind of every week you see something about this. But I can see how that kind of you were meeting and still have an incredible career. But at the same time, was it that were you thinking about gambling whilst training, or was there like that separation?
I think it was more separation.
Okay.
Whenever I was playing football, I was so focused, so determined to play football. As soon as I stepped off the training pitch, that's when the gambling started to kick in. So people say it's like a happy place. My happy place was a football pitch playing in between the white lines. And once you come off that, then my mind started to wander elsewhere and start thinking about other stuff.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. It's like, I know you have shared it often, but it's still difficult to recite, like I imagine, like some of these details. But how does it... this idea of kind of like private bookmakers, almost like on hand, isn't it? You can get the private bookmaker whenever you want. It's almost like having it in your pocket.
Yeah,
it's almost like it replaced the kind of phone in that sense.
It's like if I didn't have the private betting company, I wouldn't be placing the bets because the salary I was on at Newcastle was so low that I wouldn't have went into debt and that sort of thing, because you're only playing with money what what you can afford, what's in your
Yeah.
bank. Whereas if you've got a private bookmaker, you've got 10, 20 grand limit, and as a 18-year-old, that's on. I think, well, as soon as when I turned 17, you become a pro. So I was on £500 a week. Then when I turned 18, I think I went up to like £3.5 grand a week. So straight away from then, you've still got a big limit. You know what I mean? And if you reach that limit, which I did at one point, and when I was at Newcastle, I owed a bookmaker through the players. It was something like 80 grand, and I was only like 19, 20 at the time. And then I asked one of the players, "Can you go and put me 130 grand on a match?" I think it was Juventus were playing Udinese or someone in a 8 to 13, I think. So I was thinking, well, if he puts 130 grand on, if they win, then
Yeah.
the 80 grand's going to be cleared. And he texted me back saying, "I can't do it." And I was like, "Well, can you not just do it this last time?" And that sort of thing. And he just went, "Well, if you lose, you're like 210 grand in debt." It's a lot of money back then. Do you know what I mean?
Kieran Dyer, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then Kieran, obviously, I had the same agent as Alan. Alan was really good for me as a young kid. He always, on the training pitch, he'd always look out for me, but he didn't know what was going on off the pitch. Whenever I was training, he'd always give me advice, goal scoring, position play, everything. It was really good. But then Kieran rang him up and said, "Alan, I think." Because Alan was a captain of the club at the time, I think you need to have a word with Chops and speak to your agent about him. He's got a problem.
This episode is brought to you in support of Calm, the campaign against living miserably. Calm is a leading UK suicide prevention charity on a mission to help people end their misery, not their lives. We both do things differently. We both know we need to change the conversation around suicide, and that's why together we're both creating space to question the defaults that shape the way we think, feel, and talk about suicide and mental health. We're opening up conversations that remind people, whatever you are facing, you're not alone. Calm has loads of tools and resources available to anyone online to help you find the support that you need, including a life-saving helpline for people open every day from 5 p.m. to midnight, as well as vital online resources for anyone who needs them. So if you or someone you know needs to talk, please visit thecalmzone.net. Thank you for being part of this. And of course, today we may touch on conversations about suicide in this episode. Together, we can question the defaults that keep people silent, smash the stigma around suicide, and help build a world where no one has to face it alone. Thank you.
So that's when the agent got involved, and then I was devastated because I was like, "Well, why are you telling people?" Do you know what I mean? But that's when I knew that the players were looking out for me. But you know yourself, as somebody who's got an addiction, unless you want to help yourself, you're not gonna get fixed. And I was like, the agent was ringing me up. He was like, "Well, what's going on?" and this and that, and I kept everything away from my parents, and I just didn't want the help. I just thought, if I keep gambling, then I can win the money back, and that's it. Everyone will be paid off, sort of thing.
Keep chasing. And that kind of very early stage debt that you kind of mounted up, that didn't clear essentially for years.
So I went to Cardiff. Newcastle offered me a new deal, and I wouldn't sign it because I knew Alan had just got injured against Sunderland. Alan was going to retire, and I knew that they were going to go out and spend big money on another striker. So I was just thinking that I'm not going to play if somebody else comes in. I may as well drop down a division, show what I can do in the Championship, and then move back into the Premier League. So I went to Cardiff, and I went to Cardiff on, I think it was £6 a week. But I had a clause in the deal that if I scored 20 goals, then I get a new contract. So while I was at Cardiff, I paid off some of the debt. I was paying it off every month, the 80k what I owed. But I was still gambling because I was earning more, which it's what you do. Do you know what I mean? And I hear this all the time, and people say, and you hear it on the radio, on the news, why do they need to gamble when they earn so much money? And people don't understand. You know what I mean? It's not like, oh, I'll just stop and stuff. It's a process. Do you know what I mean? It's an addiction. So obviously I was at Cardiff. I'd scored 20 goals by February, so I got a new deal. So then I went to £10 a week. and there was a clause in my contract that if somebody came in for 5 million, then the club would sell me. But obviously, at the time, you've gone from £6,000 a week to £10,000 a week, so you're thinking, well, I've got another £4,000 a week here, I can put some more bets on and that sort of thing. So my incentive was, if I play well on the pitch, I'm going to earn more money to bet. Do you know what I mean? And that's probably why when I do speak to people and they're like, how did you do it? How did you stay focused on that? And this is why if you're playing well, you earn more money. If you earn more money, there's more money to bet. So yeah, and then obviously I went to Cardiff, and then Sunderland came in for me, and Roy Keane paid 5 million. And that's when I was really honest with everyone. I had to tell them, because I got a sign-on fee. I had to tell my mum and dad that pretty much all the sign-on fee was going to go and pay gambling debts, which was hard to take. And then obviously I had to tell the football club as well, Sunderland, that I had a bit of a problem, but they didn't think it was as bad as what it was. Obviously, Roy was brilliant, and it got to a point when I was at Sunderland, and I think it was my agent. He phoned the club and said he needs to get help. It's somebody needs to do something. And Roy Keane was brilliant, because straight away he got on the phone to Sporting Chance Clinic, and he told them, listen, we need to get Michael in to Sporting Chance as quick as possible. The clinic was fully booked, so I went to another place in London called Capio Nightingale. Okay. So I was staying in the Landmark Hotel. This was all through the football club. They wanted me to get help, but like I've already told people, unless you want help, you're not gonna do it for yourself. So I think I was there for 2 weeks. I would stay in the Landmark, go to the Capio Nightingale, which was literally around the corner, from 9 o'clock till 5 o'clock. But what people didn't know is 5 o'clock, there was a betting shop around the corner from the hotel, Ladbrokes I think it was. So I'd go in there for like the last 3 hours of the racing. So you've got the club thinking that they're doing me a favour by sending me there to help me, when really I'm abusing it by going out in London, going to the betting shops and that sort of thing. As long as I was at the clinic for 9 o'clock, then they would tell the club, he's here, he's turned up, we're trying to help him. Yeah. But other people didn't know what was going on in the background.
So much and thanks again for saying that. Is how did it, because there's the gambling part, and I think it's quite easy for us to have the conversation around gambling, but how did it feel when you weren't gambling, if that makes sense? Did it?
I don't know, because I was constantly gambling. Do you know what I mean? It was only when I was playing football that I wasn't gambling. So for probably 3-4 hours a day when there was no racing, I wasn't really betting. So when you're asking me a question, how did it feel when you weren't betting? At the time, I was betting. I was constantly betting. Do you know what I mean?
Think about the next one and constant cycle.
Yeah, it was only when I was going training where I'm with the lads and having a laugh and joke, and I'm fully focused on playing football, preparing for Saturday, that my mind wasn't thinking about gambling.
Did you spend money on other things? Cars, clothing,
holidays?
Yeah,
I had a great cars at the time. I had a CLS 63, which in 2007 it was, and it was the very first CLS 63 that was in the country, because I got it from Germany. I got it from Mercedes in Germany. Had a Range Rover. Holidays, I used to go to Dubai for 4 weeks every summer. I'd just been married. I spent 300k on a wedding. So I was living a lifestyle as well as gambling. Do you know what I mean? It wasn't just I was gambling and that's it, and I wasn't spending money on other things and that sort of thing. I was giving my mum and dad money and paying. I bought them a house and paying the mortgage and that sort of thing. So yeah, I was still living a lifestyle.
You're still living the life of the football player that you kind of see. Yeah. And how, I imagine that must have been quite a moment to tell your mum and dad and family.
I think that was the worst, to actually admit to them that there was a problem, because to them I was just the little boy. Do you know what I mean? They didn't know what was going on in the background, and up until after that, they would try and help me as much as possible. But I've always said, nobody could help you unless you want to help yourself.
Mm.
So it wasn't a case of them not being there for me. They were always there for me. Whereas I know some people that have got addictions, stems from early childhood and stuff like that. With me, I had a great childhood. It wasn't really until when I was at Sporting Chance, probably the second time, when they'd done the test. I filled in the workbook and everything, and they put it down to that. The buzz I was getting on the pitch, I was trying to recapture it off the pitch. And back then you could bet on football in different leagues. Nothing better than a 90-minute winner. Nothing better than your horse just getting up on the line or the dog just getting up and that sort of thing. So they had put it down to my addiction was mainly because I was trying to get the feeling on the pitch, off the pitch as well.
It's such a fascinating insight, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because it's quite a lazy opinion when people say, why? You have everything, you have the world at your feet. You're playing alongside Alan Shearer. You made it. You've got enough money.
Yeah.
Why do you bother? It's so not about that.
Yeah.
That it's quite difficult to put into words.
Yeah.
That idea of getting the buzz off the pitch that you got on the pitch. Do you think it could have been achieved any other way? As you look back and try and make sense.
I don't think so. No, because look, you can go out and party and stuff like that. I used to drink, but I only used to drink when I would go out. Never took drugs. So it's like people have always said to me, a drug addiction is totally different to a gambling one, because people could see me and they just thought I was nothing wrong with me, because a drinking drug addiction, you can see it in their face. You can see it. Whereas gambling, you don't see it.
Yeah.
People would see it in my eyes, because sometimes I'd stay awake till 4 o'clock in the morning betting on South American football and that sort of thing. So the next day I'd be tired. But no, that I don't think I could have recaptured it any other way. It was just the buzz I was getting from scoring goals, and I scored a lot of goals. Trying to recapture that off the pitch, obviously, I'm not talking about when I was gambling with the Newcastle players. That was totally different. That was me wanting to be part of them, and trying to be in their circle. Yeah. But then later on in life, when you're going into the clinics and that sort of thing, they're asking me, well, your debt's all been cleared. Why are you still doing it? And it was because trying to recapture what I was doing on the pitch, which is why I've always said, whenever I was on the pitch, gambling wouldn't come into my head. It was only pretty much when I was off it.
Yeah, there's so much tied into this, because you say around, horse getting up on the line, or a 90th minute winner, which a lot of Liverpool fans are enjoying at the moment. But and this idea that kind of joy and that spike it gives you. But then when you compare against, South American football, 3 a.m. in the morning, was the buzz there when you won?
That was just a habit.
Okay.
I wasn't bothered if it got to a stage where if they won, so what? That's what it came down to. The buzz had kind of gone.
Okay. Did you feel anything when you'd win? You'd just be like,
not really, no, because look, it could have been up 30k, but the next day it was gone. It was that sort of thing. So the buzz had kind of worn off, and then it started to become just a habit now of just doing it.
Yeah. So your daily routine was planned around kickoff times on teams that sometimes I struggle to pronounce. It's just reality. It's
Sao Paulo and Botafogo, and
but that is the reality, isn't it? Of ease of gambling in our pockets. And I always I've been quite fascinated by gambling for quite a long time. I've struggled with gambling in the past, but also I'm quite interested to see how people spend their time socially. And I think if you take, what's the classic example, maybe a bingo hall, and you go there and, you get your food and drink, and everyone knows each other, and everyone knows that, that person's family are doing this, and they saw them the other day. And it's become, gambling is part of that experience. When you take sports gambling online, especially, or casino gambling online, it takes a completely different ballgame where the goal here is for that person to be rinsed of money. Yeah. That is the ultimate objective. So we're going to give them every market under the sun. We're going to give them every single piece of data to make them feel as if they are informed, but no clue on how to study the data or how to read the statistics. And then it's almost like the whole game changed with digitalization. That's kind of my feeling. And did your gambling changes change when it came to that kind of social environment of cards, casino, to then online?
I think so, yeah, because I didn't really do much on online gambling. I was always a person that wanted to be there, if whether it was in the casino.
Mm.
And I remember one time when I was in the casino in Newcastle, and this is the type of people that were coming up to me. It was like the manager of the casino was coming up to me, and he was like, "Oh, we're opening one of the casinos in South Wales." Do you know what I mean? So straight away they're telling me that there's going to be one of the type of casino that was in Newcastle is going to be one in South Wales when I was playing for Cardiff. So straight away people know that I like a bet.
Yeah.
Whether he should have told me or not, at the
Mm.
end of the day, they know I'll spend money.
Mm.
So they're trying to push me into an environment where what I didn't know that was going to be one in South Wales. People
Yeah.
are telling me. So look, at times it was tough, but at the end of the day, if you, like I've always said, unless you want to help yourself, nobody can force you to do it.
Mm. We could speak for hours, couldn't we? We really could. It's very difficult to move on from some of this stuff. But so I'm really intrigued at this moment where you've Sporting Chance the second time around on the kind of workbook environment, and then you're kind of getting these kind of realizations. Why do you think, these are hard questions, like why do you think the kind of realization of that buzz on the pitch type feeling, how you weren't able to implement in that into your life, do you think? Or how could it have been different as well, as another question in that?
I think I didn't really know much about the gambling. Once you do your research and you do your workbooks and you delve deeper into it, and then when I was at Sporting Chance, they were saying to me, "Go and get a sponsor. A sponsor, as in when you go to GA, you meet up with someone and get his number, and then if you've got a problem about gambling, then you can speak to him." That's what a sponsor is. It's not a sponsor that's going to give you money. So they were telling me, "Go and get yourself a sponsor," and then I was thinking, well, it's quite embarrassing for me. Do you know what I mean? When I was at Ipswich, I was going to the GA meetings, and Ipswich were really good for me. Really, really good. One of the best football clubs to look after the players. And Ipswich were willing to help me on the basis that I self-excluded myself from every betting shop in Ipswich. But also they brung a guy called Steve Williams, who was an Olympic athlete at the time. He just won a gold medal, and they brought him into the football club to work with me on a one-to-one basis, because Ipswich knew if they got my mind right and my head fully focused, they had a player that was going to score them goals. So in the morning I'd be up at like 7:30 and either gone to the David Lloyd swimming or gone for a jog around the training ground, making sure that I was eating properly. Once training was finished, go to the David Lloyd again. Just trying to keep my mind occupied, really. And they didn't have to do that. And I've got a lot of respect for Ipswich, the football club, and the fans as well, because look, they're part of it, and they were brilliant for me. As much as I give them a lot of abuse as well and stuff like that, but when you look back now and you think who was really there for you. And then obviously when I went to Ipswich, I had to go into Sporting Chance. But I was in Sporting Chance for 2 weeks. But I was allowed out on a Saturday to play the games in the Championship. So Sporting Chance is near Southampton, Portsmouth. So I remember we were playing Cardiff, my old team, and so in the morning I got driven to the Cardiff City Stadium, played the game. I think we drew 2-2 and I scored. And I remember Simon Clegg coming up to me and he was so happy. And he was like, "Oh, this is amazing. You've played so well. Your mind, you're fully focused and that sort of thing. You're getting cured." And I was like, "Simon, it's more than just this. It's I've got to take it on a day-to-day thing." But like I said before, Ipswich were brilliant, but it was trying to understand what gambling was all about. That I don't need to. It got to a point where them losses have gone, And I always thought I could chase after them and win the money back no matter where I was getting the money from and that sort of thing. It was always the case, I'll win the next bet, I'll win the next bet. Whereas it got to a point where I was like, well, that's gone. I can't get that back now.
Okay.
And that's when I started to realise, and that's what really started to help me, because I always thought from a young age when I first started gambling that I'll get the money back. Whereas when I got older and more wiser, it was a case of, well, that's gone. I can't get that back now. Move on, sort of thing.
Yeah, and they're not connected.
Yeah.
You've had 10 losses in a row, doesn't mean the 11th is guaranteed.
Yeah.
So it's really interesting, because I really want to make sure that we go into like what could be different for the, next version of the young guy growing up in Newcastle. With and how bad did things get at that? I think from my research, that kind of Cardiff City on the couple of stints you had, and then Ipswich. What was the extent of kind of those?
Well, I was getting in trouble with gangsters and stuff like that. Loan sharks, borrowing the money, people turning up at the training ground, and I think that's when Ipswich probably got enough. They tried to help me as much as possible, and I didn't want to help myself, sort of thing. Do you know what I mean? As much as they can only do so much for you, it's down to yourself. And then it started to become stages where sometimes I wasn't betting, sometimes I was betting and hiding it from the football club.
Okay.
It just depends on what money I could get and then how I could get the bets on. So I was like driving like 40 minutes away because I couldn't bet in Ipswich. I had to go somewhere else.
Because you were self-excluded from the city.
And trying to put bets on. And then I had a court case with the British Horse Racing Authority for horse fixing and stuff like that while I was at Ipswich.
Yeah.
And they said to me, just don't appeal it. Don't go to court. You've got a gambling addiction, so why do you want to fight it? Just get a ban from the racecourse. So I was banned from the racecourse for 10 years.
What did you do to get the ban?
We were paying a jockey to pull up horses, which we I lost a lot of money in the betting accounts, and then obviously I got a ban as well. But that's what I needed. I needed to be banned from the racecourses. So the club was saying to me, why should you fight it? Just let them go ahead with the case and see what happens. So I served my time. I think my ban ended probably 2 or 3 years ago, and I haven't been to the racecourse since. I just don't need to. So that was with Ipswich, and I think it wasn't really until when I left the UK and I went to play in India when you can't bet over there. It's impossible.
Is it illegal?
Well, it's not illegal. You just can't get on an app.
I see.
If I tried to set up an app in that sort of thing, it's impossible to do it. So in a way, it was good for me to go to India, because then it was just more to do with what life's all about and what should have happened in an early stage of my career. It just changed me as a person. Going to India, it made me appreciate what life was all about. Because you see a lot of poverty and young kids on the street, and it got to a point where whenever I speak to people now, it's like I'm no different to anybody else. I had a talent, that was it. My job was a footballer. Somebody's job could be, I don't know, a car salesman or working in a supermarket. We're all human beings. It's just I had a different talent to somebody else. Somebody that works in a supermarket, he gambles, I gambled. Doesn't mean we're two different people. And that's how I whenever I see people now and they always say, "Oh, you were my hero growing up in this and that," but why was I a hero? It was just a job. Do you know what I mean? I'm just a kid from Newcastle, sort of thing.
It's very powerful, that kind of almost like grounding of seeing people, really, really struggling. Again, everything's relative, isn't it? But and almost how that happened at the time of your life as well, because you've only got almost like you had a grounding of support. You understood a lot more about gambling, wiser perhaps. Yeah,
well, that's the main thing. You obviously going to the clinics and that sort of thing, you learn all about the gambling.
Yeah,
you're obviously watching the news and that sort of thing, so you're picking up on more stuff about the gambling, understanding what it's about. And then you've got to try and surround yourself with good people as well, because especially when I went to India and I was asking some people to borrow money or put me a bet on, there's certain friends that would say yes and there's certain friends that would say no. So then you know who's looking out for you and who's not looking out for you. So then you've got to disappoint people again and kind of move away from them a little bit.
Yeah, it's very powerful, and I think I was reflecting, I mean, maybe a couple of days ago. The moment you shared on how you text your family at your very lowest, on the train down. If you don't mind, could you take us back to that?
Yeah, that was at Ipswich, and it was look, as much as everybody that had tried to help me, and I remember we played. I think we were playing West Ham it was either the Tuesday or Wednesday. And I think I was going down to Ipswich on the Monday morning, because we had the weekend. We played on the weekend. I went back up to Newcastle, and I was getting text messages from some people in Essex who had got money off to gamble, and they were sending me pictures saying they're going to do this, they're going to do that, and I just thought to myself, I was like, I've got nothing to lose anymore. What's the point in sort of being around, sort of thing. So then I sent my mum and dad a message and a couple of my mates, and I was just like, well, thanks for everything. I was like, I've had enough. And that's when my dad rang me straight away, and he was like, well, give me the number and I'll ring them and sort them out. And he was saying that I should have told them and about what was going on and that sort of thing. But that was the lowest I'd ever got, where I was thinking about committing suicide and things like that. But then obviously you go from one extreme, and then I think we're playing West Ham on the Tuesday or Wednesday, I think it was. And I was in the starting lineup, and we beat West Ham 5-1 and I scored. So a couple of days later, I'm thinking about committing suicide. 2 days later, I'm scoring goals for Ipswich at West Ham. Do you know what I mean? It just shows you how different things can be. Like I've always said to you, my happy place was playing football, scoring goals, and that's where I felt comfortable. But it was just, you get some things in your head that, like I said to you, I just thought, what's the point? I've let everybody down. Do you know what I mean? It was one of them things.
Thank you very much for sharing that. It's never going to be an easy thing for you to share. I don't think it's like such a, if you don't mind me saying, did you have a plan to take your own life at that point?
Yeah, I was on the train, and I was going to get off the train, and I was ready to I probably would have just jumped in front of a train. That's the thoughts that was going through my head. So it wasn't really. I think if I didn't text anyone, then I probably would have done it. But I just thought that I had to reach out to people in a way that I needed the help, but I needed somebody to be there for me, because I was the lowest you could ever get.
Yeah.
And people say you can't get better until you hit rock bottom. And I've hit rock bottom. I was playing in the Championship. I'd probably scored 10 goals at the time for Ipswich. I was in probably the top 5 scoring charts, and people are thinking, well, he's got no problems. What do you know what I mean? That sort of thing. People don't understand what's actually going on in people's lives.
It's incredibly there's a contrast in it, isn't there? You know, like you feel that low, where suicide is a very valid and very logical at that point, act that you could take, and it was so dark for you, but at the same time turning up and everyone kind of probably singing your name, and
that's what happened 2 days later. It's like,
hell is going on?
Do you know what I mean? I remember after the game, I'm lying in my bed. We've just beat West Ham 5-1, and I'm thinking to myself, well, a couple of days later, I might not have been here. The game wouldn't have gone ahead. That sort of thing.
It's incredibly scary. And that moment of rock bottom, what did your recovery almost look like from that point?
Well, it was a case of then trying to go to sport and trans clinic.
Yeah.
Just speaking to as many people as possible. and just trying to understand the situation I was in and how to become a better person. That was my main focus. Do you know what I mean? Obviously, I went to Blackpool the year after Ipswich. Didn't play much at Blackpool. It was one of the worst decisions I made in my career. Going to the football club. But you learn from your mistakes. And I was diagnosed with depression at Blackpool as well, which nobody knows about. So for 3-4 months of the season, towards the end of the season, the club wouldn't let me play football. It was a case of, well, you've got a problem, so we don't really want you around the first team, sort of thing.
Wow.
Yeah.
Is that what it would actually like?
Pretty much, yeah.
And that was your last English club?
Yeah. Then I went to India, yeah.
That must have been, how did that feel knowing that you'd been through so much, you know, very well-known, like famous football clubs trying to fight this, and then when you were diagnosed with depression, you just didn't get the support?
It was more of a case, look, off the pitch, obviously Sam Oyston, who was the son of the Oystons, he really nice guy, really looked out for me, really helped me as much as he can. But at the end of the day, there's only so much people can do for you. But on the pitch, it was a case of you've got to do it yourself, sort of thing.
Yeah,
I think they were probably in a position where they weren't doing well in the league. I think Paul Ince got sacked. Barry Ferguson took over, so they were in a bit of transition period as well, and they don't really want to think about one of their players. They'd rather think about what they probably thought is their higher priority, which was trying to fix the management and that sort of thing. So why should they look after one of their players when they've got 25 other players to look after as well?
It's quite sad, really.
Yeah. So you kind of know which clubs were there for you. Like I've always said, Ipswich were brilliant. Some people at Blackpool were really good for me, and some people weren't. I've always spoke to Dave Jones, my Cardiff manager, and look, I get on so well with Dave Jones, and I've always said to them, how come you didn't help? You knew about my gambling because people actually come to the training ground and spoke to Dave about it. People who I owed money to. And Dave has said this open and honest to me. He says, Chops, if I had took that away from you, you might not have been the player that was scoring all these goals. He says, so I left it to you. He says, it's not a case of me not caring. It's a case of I'm a footballer, man. I'm the manager of the football club. If I take away your gambling and stop you doing what you want to do, that might affect your performances on the pitch, which you can't argue, do you know what I mean? Because the best times that I had as a footballer were probably while I was playing for Cardiff. So
yeah, most goals, right?
Yeah, and we were so close to getting promoted to the Premier League and that sort of thing. It was where, as a man manager, he was brilliant. Like we'd play on a Saturday, I'd say to Dave, if I score and we win, give me till Tuesday off. I want to go to Newcastle. And he was like that, fine. But if I didn't score and we didn't win, he'd let me know about it, sort of thing. So as a man manager, he was good for me because he knew what I needed, but he didn't want to take away what I was doing because at the time that's what was making me happy as well off the pitch. And if you take that away from someone, then how's it going to affect them? So he had to play two roles, if you know what I mean. One for the football club and obviously one to manage players.
It's quite interesting, the different experiences you had in different clubs. Like, as you look back now, you talk so highly of Ipswich. Who were the biggest people in your life? And I guess what other supports, obviously Sporting Challenge you speak of very highly, what other things helped you?
I think obviously my mum and dad, obviously the agent at the time, Simon Bailiff, Alan Shearer was a helpful. Kieran Dyer at an early start who told Alan about it. Then I had obviously Dave Jones, who I still speak to now. Roy Keane was brilliant with me every day, pretty much every day after training. He'd ask me into his office, sit down, have a cup of tea, how are you feeling? That sort of thing. He was, because, look, he had his own issues. Now he knows as a player, at the end of the day, we're only human, so you've got to look out for these people. And I think that's why Roy probably got a little bit. Well, I've done well for Roy. The goals I scored at Sunderland, well, we won 3 points at the time on 4 or 5 occasions, and I kept them in the Premier League. And Roy knew that. I knew that when I was called upon playing for Roy Keane, I would give it my all because he's looked after me.
Yeah.
So I'm willing to run through a brick wall for him. Then obviously when I went to Ipswich, we had Paul Jewell, Simon Clegg, Steve Williams, and some of the players that were looking out for me. So there's a lot of people that were there for me, but like any addiction, unless you're willing to help yourself, you're not going to get anywhere in life.
I know, and just a massive thank you for sharing that moment on the train, and also those very, very difficult moments of like not knowing what the next day brings, and even if that's going to be there. And I think that takes a huge amount to say. And I think massive reason why we set up the podcast was to have conversations around suicide. And I just appreciate you doing that. I want to spend time in a moment talking about how we stop this happening again. Big kind of broad question, but equally, just for you, what would have you changed? What could have been different? I appreciate what you said around, you have to accept it yourself, and in order to go into it, what?
Do you know what? I think if I came through the academy now, I wouldn't have gambled.
Why do you think?
Because it's not. I don't think it's in the culture that much in a football club. I think it's totally changed. You don't see many players playing cards on a team bus anymore. I don't know if that's just because there's a lot of foreign players in the English game now.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know Championship, League 1, League 2. I don't know the situation. I'm just going off the basis of what you see in the Premier League and that sort of thing. And I know people have gambling addictions and stuff like that, and I know they do in the lower leagues, because I get people's girlfriends, wives asking me who do they reach out to, because their husbands or boyfriends are scared to speak to the football club because they're worried that the club will drop them, which is wrong. But at the end of the day, football's a business now. It's a results-based business. And if you don't perform well, there's that much money in the game, they'll just bring somebody else in. So this is why some people are worried about opening up to the manager or to the football club, because they're scared that they'll lose their place on the team.
It's quite an interesting position for you to be in, because you're...
Well, I'll always give advice. Obviously, the main thing is to reach out to the PFA. That's what they're there for. Players Football Association. They're there to help. And what gets discussed with the PFA should be private and confidential.
Okay.
And then it should be down to the PFA to help these players. But then you've got the Premier League and the FA. There's so much more can be done. It's like, obviously, I watch the Premier League games when I'm back at home in Amsterdam. And if you're watching Sky Sports, with my little boy who's 7 years old, we watched Newcastle-Liverpool a couple of weeks ago. Half time comes, what's the first advert? It's a betting advert. And I'm sitting next to my 7-year-old son who's watching a Premier League match, looking at his heroes, Salah and Anthony Gordon and them type of players. And then the first thing that comes up is a betting advert. You look at how many teams are sponsored by betting companies.
And you must have been playing in football shirts of betting.
Well, yeah, I was at Cardiff, and one of the betting companies was SoboBet or something. So when I step off the pitch and I'm in the dressing room and I'm looking directly at my teammate across from me, I see a betting sign. And when I was at Sporting Chance, they always talk about triggers.
Yeah.
And that straight away triggers my mind because you can see it; it's in front of you. So straight away you're thinking betting.
Yeah.
So I don't know if there's that much money involved in football now that if they take it out, who's going to put the money into the football clubs? Which is why all these betting companies have been allowed to do all these sponsorships. But I think clubs have got to act on behalf of players sometimes.
Yeah.
I look at the situation with Sandro Tonali a couple of 2 years ago, I think it was. Now, the Football Association banned him for 10 months, I think it was. I totally disagree with that because how's his mental health now? So it's okay banning him, but then you're taking away something that he loved.
Yeah, imagine if you weren't playing football at that time.
That he only knows about. Do you know what I mean? He only knows what football is. Doesn't know what to do. And I know he was still allowed to train and stuff like that. But I don't think Ivan Toney was allowed to train. So these people from governing bodies, it's okay banning players, but then you've got to think about their mental health as well.
Yeah.
Whereas I would have said, listen, you're going to get fined. You shouldn't have been doing it. But you can still play for the club, but you've got to get treatment and you've got to get help.
Yeah.
For 2-3 years on a weekly basis.
It's almost like what comes first is the fact that we need to discipline and show the world that you cannot gamble in professional football versus actually the person has an issue here and we have to resolve.
And I don't care what the FA say. They can put bans on players. They can say you can't bet on your own football team. You can't bet on this. You can't bet on that. I know players that have a betting account through their mates.
Right.
And they still bet on football in the Premier League. So how do you crack down on it? You can't. Yeah, one player is not going to have a betting account in his name. Just tell his mate, John Smith, go and open a betting account, give me your login details, and I'll take over. I'll send you money every month. Put it through your betting account.
It's not particularly hard when you frame
exactly.
It like that.
So I don't know why these big governing bodies are like, well, you can't do this, you can't do that, you can't do that, because it's easy to get around.
It's almost like there's no, or maybe not no, it's a bit too high. There's not enough action on actually how do people get to this point.
Yeah.
So let's take those two examples. Incredibly well-known football players, incredibly skilled football players. You would suggest that perhaps they should have been allowed to play, the right level of professional support, 2 or 3 years of guidance. And let's say it's 16, 17-year-old Sandro Tonali. What would you, or Ivan Toney, what would you do differently?
I would get ex-players that have had an addiction, whether it's drug, alcohol, gambling, and to go into the football clubs and speak to these young kids. Because if you can try and stop it at the age of 14, 15, 16, it then becomes a rolling cycle and it'll filter through the football club.
It's interesting.
And as a young kid, if you can educate the kids into that, because look, nowadays, kids at a young age are getting loads of money. Whether they're gambling or not, I don't know. But they need educated that not to go down that route sort of thing. And I think that's what the Premier League, the FA, the government, it's so easy to do. There's loads of us that have had a gambling addiction. And I know from speaking to like Merce and Matthew Everington and myself, and obviously Joey Barton got banned and stuff like that. They'd all go and speak to these young kids about the effects of gambling and addiction and that sort of thing. But clubs don't want to reach out to these people. They just want their players to come to training and play and do this and do that. They
like
don't see
almost.
They don't see what other kids need to in their lifestyle sort of thing. Because I know it goes on, because I know some players have got problems, because I've had messages before. I've spoke to people. Who do I speak to? What do I do if my husband doing this and he's doing that?
It's even harder because of the reputation and the known face and the known name, right? To even access support as soon as that is triggered, as soon as that is on a form, because a lot of people don't, in any form, gain the right support because they are worried about the ripple effect of their name being associated with.
And it's not just that; it's like my reputation in the UK is finished. I couldn't get a coaching job in the UK
because of this.
I probably couldn't even do the TV in the UK. But 3 weeks ago, I'm in Malaysia working for Astro TV, doing the Premier League games, talking about football and my knowledge. I was doing all the TV work in India. Yeah, in the UK, because you've had an addiction and you've been a gambler, you don't kind of get the authority that other players get.
If anything, you'd be more relatable, I'm sure, to many people.
Yeah,
you've had your own struggles and you can share it, and
it's
try
like
and help others
it's
through
gone.
it.
You rebuild yourself. Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? That's gone out the window, sort of thing. You're a different person. Work with people to help rebuild yourself back up, not just push you to one side.
Yeah. So I really hear you, that idea of getting, ex-football players in to speak to young people, but that kind of lack of perhaps want of clubs to do that as a really obvious, logical space. We talked about kind of intertwining government, gambling. I've seen some recent articles in the Guardian recently that were talking about the amount of money we would save if we taxed gambling companies appropriately, and how that would help from a poverty perspective here in the UK. But then also you see some of the efforts from the leading gambling firms to socialise and get close to politicians. And when you start kind of reading into it and you see how intertwined all of this is, it's sickening, and I can't get away from it, because I think alcohol, drugs, is looked at very differently to gambling. And I think because of the hidden nature of some of this, it's so difficult to actually understand the severity. And I think it's then very difficult to know whether suicides, for instance, do have a connection to gambling-related harm because of the hidden nature of gambling and how easy it is to hide the fact that person could be gambling.
Well, do you know what annoys me? You can't. A cigarette company can't sponsor a football club.
Cigarettes is a great example. Yeah.
So why can't they not put the ban on a gambling company to sponsor a football club? How come it's okay for cigarettes, yet they know how much harm a cigarette can do to your body? Gambling's exactly the same.
My gut is the number of jobs it creates, how much money it fuels the economy. Of course, not my opinion, but I would imagine it's as intertwined as that. Even you see, what were some of the examples? Football Index.
Right.
Do you remember that? There was a kind of like pooling league system. Kind of just went bust. It was it's run not to an appropriate standard. Suddenly thousands of people left. They were the front of I think 2 football clubs at the time.
Right. Okay.
So this is not even just like your big players, your Ladbrokes, William Hills. Yeah. This is these kind of smaller players playing in the gambling space, using football as a vehicle to attract new business, and then not being run, and then suddenly people are losing their money. And you think like how awful some of this is, and how many people are trying to rebuild their lives and make sense of it, but also control their gambling thereafter. And it makes so much logical sense. The one space you would protect is live football. And young people, like you say, you talk about your young son, probably wants to be the next Alan Shearer or next Michael Chopra, wherever it might be. But you have to protect him from seeing and understanding that actually gambling is prevalent, and you are going to get shown it, but actually there is support available. Yeah, we choose to put certain adverts on the TV and certain sponsors.
It's like they always say that at the end of the gambling advert. It's like if you've got a problem, then contact this person in GamStop and this sort of thing, but don't advertise it. And I understand why players and ex-managers and they all do these adverts for gambling companies. I totally understand it, because they're getting thousands of pounds to say a couple of things, and Peter Crouch does it, and Harry Redknapp, but the end of the day, if they're not in the professional game of football, how else are they going to make money? So you can't put your foot down and stamp out and criticise ex-players and managers and that sort of thing. I think it's got to come from the top with, like I've always said, if a cigarette company can't advertise on a football shirt, then I don't think a betting company should. Now, a betting company can't advertise on, I think it's under 18s kits.
Okay.
So I think when Newcastle had Fun 888, they weren't on the youth team kits in the academy. So it's only the first team. So they automatically know the awareness for what it is, what it can do to a kid.
Yeah.
Because it's not allowed to be advertised on a kid's training kit.
Yeah.
On a kid's match shirt. in the academy. Yeah, it's acceptable to be on the first team kit,
Yeah.
where you've got
Everyone
thousands of
idolising them.
kids,
Yeah.
thousands of kids in a football stadium watching.
It's almost like you can't say young people can't be seen to be advertising
They can't wear
the
it.
company, yet they actually are okay to absorb it.
Yeah.
Which is almost like, based on everything that we know about mental health, science, psychology, and marketing combined, is a very, very difficult, tricky position for them. And the fact that it's still accepted is kind of beyond belief, really, isn't it? Really, really is beyond belief. What do you think of, let's say, some of these kind of gambling awareness weeks, and you see kind of posters on the high street, make gambling. It seems to be the same every single year, and I always think to myself, like, why do you bother? I honestly do, and I don't know. I should do that because I think realistically, if gambling companies, in their nature, they have to make money for shareholders, but at the same time advertise gambling. Like you're saying, you've shown how easy it is to try to get around kind of the systems. I feel like it needs something different. Not why I don't bother with gambling awareness week. I get why we should bother as a society, but when it's led by the operators, I can't make sense of that. Maybe I'm naive to something, but it needs to be led by something different. It needs to be led by real people, real voices, and I think that goes back to your point. I think that's kind of a huge problem. But I also think, if I take, I think Paddy Power's a prime example of it. I think, this is my gut, I think a lot of people know Paddy Power because of their humour. I think you see some of their work on social media and it is hilarious. Yeah. And you kind of, at some points, this for me anyway, I sometimes forget, Paddy Power, it's the betting firm. It's not just these very, very comical. And it's like, should that be allowed? I kind of question that as well, because you obviously, that's working with the social media algorithms to get reach. Yet actually, of course, that's going to be hitting young people. So you've automatically then got that association, and then young people are seeing the algorithm, and they're probably very similar people who are going to be more vulnerable. So it's another kind of very clear gap, I think, that needs extra protection. But you've gone on now to do some very, incredible things. Football for Peace, I was reading about. It'd be great Football to tell us a bit more about that.
So it's a charity based in the UK. In 2019, I think it was, we kicked off a campaign with Prince William called Football Saves Lives. We do a load of peace matches. If there's two countries conflict, we'll try and bring, football unites the world. So we try and bring the two countries together by doing a peace match. In 2021, 2022, we set up Mesut Ozil's an ambassador. So we set up a Mesut Ozil peace football centre in Bradford. Obviously, Mesut's a big Muslim. There's not many Asians on the pathway to becoming professional footballers. So we've done it in Bradford. Every Sunday I was going up to Bradford to coach the kids for 2 hours. Look, some of them are not great at football, but on the basis of they're getting football training, they're doing active stuff. And also it's keeping the kids off the street for a couple of hours on a Sunday as well, because sometimes the streets are dangerous. And that's going really well. We've got 150 kids at the minute, girls and boys. And it's just helping people that are underprivileged. All the training's free, all the training kit's free, everything comes from sponsors. I've done some stuff with the UN, the Commonwealth, the US State Department. I went to the Maldives in 2023, I think it was, for counter-terrorism. We had to do classroom work for kids, educate them, understand why some kids get radicalized, write a report for the Commonwealth and the US State Department so they can continue ongoing problems to try and help these kids not to go down that route and live a normal life. I was supposed to go to Nigeria, Abuja, a couple of years ago. That got cancelled because of how dangerous it was in the elections. So then we done online Zoom classes with the kids, and it was really tough because we were trying to understand from the kids about the regime, and not many kids wanted to speak up because we eventually found out that if they did speak up against some regimes, then they would get shot. So then we had to educate the kids, make it more fun sort of thing, classroom talk, and get them to speak up and try and do programs for the US State Department to follow up on things. So, look, like I said to you before, when I went to India, it totally changed me as a person, and I'm not afraid to admit it. When I was playing in the Premier League and that sort of thing, how I thought I was bigger and better than anybody else. I didn't have time for no one. And then I really appreciate what life was all about, and now I'm just a normal person and trying to give back to the community something that that I could have done with years ago, but there wasn't many role models for me. Obviously, I was one of the first Asians to play in the Premier League, and there wasn't many Asian role models out there.
Okay,
so to me, I'm trying to help young Asian players why they're struggling to become professional footballers, how to help them, and it's the mentality thing with the clubs as well. It's something that I've been speaking to the FA about, and the FA and the Dal from the FA from diversity is really keen on it. But it's a process and it takes time, and I'm enjoying life.
Yeah, you're in a good place, it feels like.
Yeah. It's good. And people obviously say, well, it couldn't have been any better than playing football. But like I've always said, it's just a job. It's going to end for everyone one day. So while people are playing, make the most of it, enjoy your life, because when it stops, it stops.
Yeah, it's amazing, that work at taking you to all corners of the world, isn't it? And that's something you're still heavily involved in. And, yeah, amazing. What's one thing you'd want to do in the next 5 years? Did prepare you for that question?
I think obviously I'd like to try and get involved with clubs. Look, I've been there, I've seen it, I've seen everything. And you've got to educate young kids. They don't get educated themselves through awarenesses and that sort of thing, and especially nowadays with the money that's involved in football. The kids have to understand what the dangers are as a professional footballer, whether it's drugs, it's alcohol, or it's gambling. They're all the same addiction. Hopefully I can get involved in that, but if not, then I've got 3 kids myself that are all boys, and hopefully one of them will make it as a footballer and follow my footsteps. And look, I've told them, well, I've told the oldest, the 17, about the dangers of addictions and that sort of thing. So hopefully they can follow in my footsteps in a different way.
They're all into football.
Yeah, all into football.
Did have much choice.
Yeah.
Amazing. Okay, so we have a set of recurring questions that we ask. You can answer these as much. You can choose not to answer them as well. So what's one societal default or like an unwritten rule in society that we have that you would completely rewrite if you could?
I think probably as a gambler, I would totally ban the advertising and gambling, betting companies and that sort of thing on just to be involved in football, really.
Yeah. So I think it's direct to the point. And I think it makes such a big difference, wouldn't it? Especially when we know how marketing works and psychology works together, and we allow it. So yes, definitely. I guess what's a belief you used to hold about mental health or kind of happiness that you've since let go of?
I think it's just taken day by day, because look, the world we live in, you never know what's going to happen the next day. And I just think you've got to enjoy every moment. You've got to cherish every moment. Even to this day, I still go back on YouTube and look at the goals I've scored and that sort of thing, because I didn't appreciate it back then. Really? It's not until I finished where I think, actually, when I was playing for Cardiff and I scored the 92nd minute winner against Swansea in a local derby, and the smiles on the fans' faces, what I'd done for that football club and the fans on that day, it was fantastic. But you don't really appreciate it until you've finished and you actually look back on it.
Quite a rivalry, that one as well.
Yeah. Obviously, I've done it for Newcastle against Sunderland as well.
Yeah.
So
the famous game.
Yeah, the 4-1.
The one that is sung about every game.
Yeah.
It's quite amazing, isn't it? The moments you had in your career.
Yeah.
When you think back to some of those. Albert Luque, we didn't talk about him.
Yeah.
That's just reminded me of that. Amazing. And okay, this is, I guess, you are very, very open, but we always ask every guest if there's something you've never shared publicly, but that perhaps you feel ready to now.
I think with me, everything I've said on podcasts, even today yourself, I'm always open and always speak from my heart, because you never know. There could be someone listening that can take advice from me that needs a little bit of help. So I've always said to people whenever I do things, if you speak honest and you're open and you tell the truth, then you could actually help somebody. So there's nothing there that I've held back on and stuff like that.
Totally, I can tell. Yeah. If we consider the world we're in now, I guess perhaps what we've talked about for the last hour, if we were to record this again in 2035, what do you hope we are talking about, or what do you worry we might be talking about?
Well, I would hope that we were talking about the changes from when we last spoke about how many clubs were sponsored by gambling companies to hopefully none. Realistically, just the society for young kids growing up. Obviously, football's the most powerful tool in the world. Not just the UK. Obviously, it's massive in the UK. It's the biggest league in the world. And hopefully these kids can understand the awarenesses from a young age. I think that I do believe it'll happen, but how soon, I don't know.
And hopefully happen soon. That's the kind of underlying message in all of that. We can't kind of wait, because I'm sure sadly many lives will be lost, and if we don't act. But no, just a massive thank you for being on. Like, absolutely loved it. Really, it's been you're such a important person, I think, for this conversation, given the kind of ripple effect you can have in that network, especially for kind of future players, but also current players, clearly, who are in a place of difficulty, and their kind of support networks. But at the same time, we haven't got any other choice. Sport is so prevalent in our societies, and especially here in the UK, and we need to protect young people going into those worlds. And, and we're very grateful that you're here to tell this story, but sadly it could have been, incredibly different. And, I definitely worry about those kind of young people coming into that world, but at the same time, we can't let gambling firms run free. This is not meant to be a podcast about, picking our kind of enemy or picking targets, but some things are just so blatantly obvious that they have to change. Thank you for highlighting that.
No problem. It's a pleasure.
Thank you very much.
Enjoyed it.
Hopefully you enjoyed listening to Michael today. I found it fascinating. Somebody could get to that level in their dream football club. He grew up in Newcastle, watching his heroes in the stands, even being a ball boy. And then to get to that level, playing alongside the most famous Newcastle player, Alan Shearer. What a moment, what a story. But how much my heart breaks knowing that he went through the vast, vast majority of his career struggling with gambling. And it feels almost like a missed opportunity. Of course, he got to an incredibly high level, and he talks about that. But actually, could it have been more? And I think this case of what ifs is what he's channeling now into his work. He's wanting every young sportsman to get to their true and full potential. And, as we kind of dig a bit deeper into Michael's story, I think what it tells us is that we need to do more to understand why people gamble. He likened it to scoring a goal at St. James's Park. This ability to score a goal, that thrill, that high that is given to him, is likened to gambling. So not all of us are able to score a goal on a professional football pitch, of course, but actually I think it tells us that we need to dig deeper into the reasons and the choices people are making when it comes to gambling. And I think if we can get to that point, I think we can then build education around it. I think we need to understand the differences between gambling in its form that we talked about today in the episode, when it comes to sports gambling and casino gambling, and other forms of financial investments that we make. Because I think underlying that, we're hoping to gamble to see a return. You place money on an investment choice, you place money on a color, on a on a particular outcome in a sporting match, and you hope for a return in the same way as you do when you invest in stocks and shares. So why is it that one is so riddled with difficulty and ripple effects of harm in gambling, and one is less so? Of course, there are significant difficulties when it comes to stocks and shares as well, but there is a time delay difference. One is very immediate gratification and reward. One is often delayed. And in education, what we know when it comes to investing is that it takes time and we need to give investments time. And in gambling, what we have, let's take, football gambling, where you can, gamble on 300, 400 single outcomes in a single game in a 90-minute period. And these games are happening all over the world, often at the same time. And that's just one sport and that's just one game. And you can bet in 300 plus different things. Like, is that right? Should we be allowing that level of access? So we need to understand what that's tapping into. What is that behavior of people wanting to invest, wanting to gamble and fill their time, but then having a whole kind of wealth of different options to do so? There's a problem intertwined within all of that. And I think what Michael's story shares is that gambling starts somewhere. So if young people are starting gambling by seeing such a wealth of different things to gamble on, and not only is that online on their smartphones most likely, but also on the high street, it's kind of impossible to escape from. Let's ladder on to that actually most often people will be on social media and they will then see incredible humor through some of the major gambling firms. Like, it attracts our attention because it is funny. We have celebrity names put alongside it. There are huge amounts of investment into the content and the marketing ability of gambling firms. Yet what we see is gambling-related harm getting worse. So is there like a mismatch here that we're seeing increased investment into gambling marketing efforts and increased related harm? So let's throw into that the cost of living crisis, and I think we've got an incredibly, incredibly dangerous situation on our hands. We have to do more to understand why people are choosing this, and also then how we protect people to gamble in a safe and responsible way. And for me, lines such as when the fun stops and only gamble what you can afford to lose are problematic, because I don't think enough people know what that means for them. I don't think there's a process for people to go through to understand exactly what is safe for them, but also when it's not fun. Because the whole point of this is there are highs and lows. It creates adrenaline. So what is fun in the moment for one person might look very different. So there's not really a way of explaining what we mean by that. So I think we need to do more there to understand the risk factors going into gambling decisions and the ways in which people are gambling. I think we've created an environment where people can gamble that is inherently not social. So if we take the bingo halls, these are fun environments for the most parts to be in. These are ways that actually brings people together. It's community building. It's not just gambling, but there are forms of food and entertainment and connection. And I'm sure a huge amount of support in those environments. But gambling in your phone, where you could quite simply place tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of bets in seconds, doesn't feel like a place that's community building. So can we add community to create gambling environments that are safer and less harmful? Because I don't buy that the gambling awareness weeks and the efforts up to this point are enough. I don't whatsoever. And I think we have to do more. Without question, we have to do more to question some of the behaviors and attitudes that we have around gambling in our society, including in the world of politics. So I hope you enjoyed the episode today. We're going to have much more on this in future episodes. Thank you.